All right, all right, all right. Pardon me. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. Okay. Um, there is a very, very, very easy way to collaborate with people outside of your organization when you're using the Microsoft 365 suite. When you don't use this way, it's very normal. The way that I'm gonna talk about, it's very normal to use the way that most people use, which is just click the share from whatever SharePoint site they're using. So they might say share this site, they try to share it, and then you go through all kinds of issues, all kinds of problems, just getting people basic access to the site. When you think you got it, then you run into another roadblock. And it's like, I granted these people access. This is so frustrating. We're just trying to do some work. Please let this work. You know what I'm saying? Then you get a little anxious. You get a little nervous when you got to send a link because then you're like, I don't want to send this link to this important stakeholder. They click it and get another access denied. We're gonna take care of that. Don't even worry about it. We got you, or I got you. Listen, my name is Thurman Trotman. This is the SharePoint Help Desk podcast. I am your host, obviously, and what I'm here to do is talk to you about the strategic way to use SharePoint and other tools in the Microsoft 365 suite. Now, if this is your first time here, don't be shocked. I don't do some long, crazy intro. I just get right into the meat and potatoes. You understand what I'm saying? So let's do this. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you I don't even know how many steps, maybe 3. Very simple, easy way to knock it out of the park when it comes to collaborating with people outside of your organization. We're going for the 99.9% solution, the one that works 99.9% of the time. Maybe it's 98.76 times percent. You know what I'm saying? 98.76. That's okay. But it works. Trust me. I've used it a million times. And it's completely understandable when someone is just, in an organization, they've been tasked to create a SharePoint site and then they try to share it with their external folks. Very annoying. Okay. So here's how we do this. First, we're going Teams centric. Start with Teams. This is where you go. I'm a SharePoint guy, but I love Teams, and they're kind of one and the same. But I love Teams as far as like creating my SharePoint sites. Here's what you do: go to Teams and create a Microsoft team. That's it. As soon as you create this Microsoft team, immediately you get a SharePoint site on the other end. So let's say you create a team called New Project. When you create the team called New Project, maybe create a channel that you got to call, something else, call that main. So you have a new project and you have a channel called main. When you go into New Project, this team that you just created, if you look under files, you'll see it's empty because that's the section where you put all the documents. You just created it, so there's no documents there, right? Cool. Now, when you look at that menu inside of the files library, you'll see something that says open in SharePoint. If you don't see it, click the 3 dots and then you'll see it. Your screen might be too small, so you need to click the 3 dots. Cool. Click open in SharePoint. Once you click open in SharePoint, you will be taken to SharePoint. When you're there, what you're seeing is the SharePoint team site that was created just now when you created the Microsoft team. This is a thing that happens every single time you create a Microsoft team until Microsoft decides that they're not going to do that anymore, which hopefully I am begging and praying that they never do that. That's how it works. Now, when you create that team, before you finalize everything, they're going to ask you, do you want to invite people? So it's at this point where you can invite people inside your organization or invite people outside of your organization based on their email. Now, if your tenant, the people who run your tenant, if they've turned off the ability for you to invite external folks, you won't be able to do what I'm talking about. Government folks, I know I help y'all out a lot. There's a high possibility that your thing might be turned off. Although recently, I think maybe it's not. I don't know yet. I don't know. We got to work this thing out. However, here's the thing. When you invite internal or external people to this team, you're basically giving them access to the SharePoint site that I was just talking about, the one called New Project. As long as you go to Teams and invite these folks, make sure you invite them as members, not owners. When you invite them, they automatically have access to that SharePoint site. And now this is how I recommend you go forward with this. If you have organization A and organization B, two totally different organizations, right? And you got to collaborate with some folks at organization A, you got to collaborate with some folks at organization B. Do not invite both organization A and organization B to the same Microsoft team. Create a team for organization A, create a team for organization B. Keep them separated that way because you want to make sure that everything that goes on that Microsoft team and SharePoint site, everything that goes there, you want the organization to have access to. Now, here's what I mean. The reason why I'm clarifying that is because some people might want to invite organization A and organization B to the same team and SharePoint site, and then use permissions to divvy up things that organization A can see and organization B can see. Can you do that? Yes. Do I recommend you do that? No. As a matter of fact, no. And what that stands for is hell no. Don't do that. Matter of fact, do whatever you want. But I would highly recommend that you do not split up permissions on one site. It's just not worth the headache. Think of your structure based off permissions. If you have one organization that has to use all of these things that you're going to be interacting with them with, create a team. Just create that team and use that with them. And the same thing for organization B. Create a separate team, call it what you want, use that team in SharePoint site. Now, let me give you a little bit more depth to what we're talking about here as far as like the technical pieces of this. When you create that team that's called new project, you have a file section that you go to and then you click open in SharePoint, right? What you're really doing, what that open in SharePoint button means, it's like this. You've clicked files and you've gone to the library of that team. So we created a team called new project. When you click files on that team, you're going to the library of that team. So when you click open in SharePoint, what you're opening is the library. You're opening the library, except you're doing it on SharePoint. That's what open in SharePoint means. It should really say open this document library in SharePoint. Well, it actually shouldn't say that. That's way too long. But you're in a document library, you click open in SharePoint. That's what you're doing. You're opening the library in SharePoint. So when you do hit open in SharePoint, you're going to land on what is the library. That same library right there that you land on SharePoint, it's literally the same library that's in Teams. It's the same deal, right? Now, when you're there on that site, there's a bunch of other things there that may not be called out on the team. Let's say, for instance, when you get to that SharePoint site, you should see home at the top of the page on the left-hand side in the navigation. It'll say home. Then it'll say a few other things. But I want to pull your attention to where it might say notebook. That notebook is a OneNote notebook that was created when you created that team. So that OneNote notebook is probably called new project. It's a OneNote notebook called new project, and you could get to it from the SharePoint site. But you can get to literally that same notebook from Teams. Because remember when you created a team, you had the section called posts, which is where you do all your chatting. You have files where we put all the documents, and then right next to files, you have notes. Yeah. I think it says notes. When it says notes, that tab that you click on right there, it opens a OneNote notebook. That is literally the same notebook in SharePoint. The one that says notebook on the navigation when you go over to SharePoint. So remember that. These two things are one and the same. All they are is just a different visual representation of accessing the same things in the cloud. So when you go to Teams, you got your file section. It's called files. And then you go inside of the library. And then that library is going to be named documents. But then that part of the library is called main because we named our channel main. Look, I do this all the time, so it's easy for me to remember. I know this is kind of wacky for you to remember because you're not out here, trying to manage teams. You're just trying to work. But I'm giving you a frame of, how this thing works so that you could work better. Now, here's the monkey wrench. They are updating teams again. If you see, I do this show with my guy Nick DeCourcy every 2 weeks. It's called a Microsoft 365 Business Boost. And on that show, last episode, we talked about how they're changing teams. Like there's a complete overhaul of teams coming. And apparently this is inspired by Slack. I don't use Slack, so a Slack user can talk about this. I have said Microsoft Teams originally was inspired by Slack, so I guess they're going back to Slack and biting what they're doing. This is crazy. Anyway, it's going to be an overhaul of the interface, but the connection between SharePoint and Teams is still going to be there. It's just going to look a little bit different. But what I need you to remember is that Teams and SharePoint share the same assets. They're just different visual interfaces. That's all. They're just different kinds of, I don't know, shades. You know what I mean? All right, I think that's the crux of what I wanted to say. Well, actually, no. Here, let me close this out, right? So when you create the team called new project, and now you have your files, and then you can see the files on SharePoint, and then you can use that SharePoint site. That SharePoint site, everyone that you've invited to the team has access to it. This is where you put everything, any and everything that you want to share with the external team or the external person. This is where you put everything. Don't make it complicated. Just know that every single thing you put on that site, they have access to. So if you need to share documents with them, put the documents on that library, obviously, in that library, on that site. Any information, any list you create, all that other stuff, put it right there on that site and just make sure that you know that they have access to it, anything you put on that site. Now, if there's something that the internal team, your team that created the team, that created the Microsoft team, Jesus, if there's something that your internal team needs to have access to that you don't want the external team to have access to, just link to it. Now, here's what I mean. Let's say on the SharePoint site, you have 5 links going down the side in the navigation. And one of them says budget. And the reason that is there is because you need to see the project budget. Like you need to stay on top of it. It's a whole thing, right? You can put a link there that says budget. And that link that says budget points back to the main site where your company keeps the budget for all of the projects. And when you click that budget, you'll see specifically the budget for that project called New Project on that other site. Now, here's the thing. That budget link, you can customize that link so that only your internal folks see that link. And literally what I'm saying is that down the left-hand side of that SharePoint site, if there's 6 links and the 6th one is budget, only your internal team will see those 6 links. The external team, they'll see 5 links. They won't see a button that says budget because you won't grant them access to do that. It's called audience targeting. So you can hide that button from everybody else that's not in the group that can see that button. So this is what you want to do. Just remember, everything that is on that site, you can share with the external person. But if you need to keep something separate, don't try to put it on the site and then divvy up permissions. I mean, can you do it? Yes, again, you can do it, but I don't recommend that you do it. I recommend that you just point away to where the thing that is restricted sits, and use some audience targeting so you can hide the button. All right, now there's one more piece to this that I probably would do better with a video. I can't really explain. Even though this is on video, it's best that I just say this out loud and then save it for a video that I'll publish one day. So, okay, so there's Teams permissions and then there's SharePoint permissions. And now let me explain this. When you're in Teams and you grant someone owner access, they obviously have elevated rights. But there's this member access that you could grant to people in Teams, and that allows them to just be a member. They don't get these owner rights over the things in Teams. However, when they have member access in Teams, by default, they have edit access in SharePoint. That's just what it is by default. Microsoft is out of their mind for putting this as a default setting. I don't know why this is like this. Somebody get Microsoft on the phone. I need to talk to them because this is crazy. Anybody inside the SharePoint community knows this is crazy. Like people have beeped about it before. It doesn't make any sense to give someone who you've granted as a member access to the team, but right over there in the SharePoint team site, they have edit rights. They should have had contribute rights. So what you need to do, and again, I'll have to show you, I'm not going to talk about it here, but what you need to do is undo their edit rights and give them contribute rights on the SharePoint site. Because here's what happens. If you create a list on the SharePoint site and you've created, let's say, like 5 columns, and you need people to put information into these columns, someone with edit rights can come to your list and delete one of your columns or add a new column or change around the view or even delete the list, I believe. I don't remember, but they could possibly delete the list. That's too much. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you think in your head, they're a member. They shouldn't be able to do that. I made them a member over there in Teams, right? But it's true. They can, as long as they have edit rights, they can do those kinds of things to your list. So what you need to do is change them out from being edit level and make them contribute, which means they come to the list, they put in information, and that's it. They deal with your administration of the list. You're the admin of the list. However you want them to see it and interact with it, that's what's going to happen. That's how they deal with it. They don't get the same rights that you have over the list, which is to edit and change things and move things. So you need to get a visual of that. I'm going to try to link to something in the show notes because while I can make a video about it, and I guess that'll be helpful, there's someone who I know that actually has a step-by-step already created. I could just link to it and you can see it. Or I'll just make my own. It's fine. Just know that you have to do that. I think that's it. That's all I had as far as the main topic. This is the easiest way I've found, not a Microsoft endorsed thing, that I've found to collaborate with external users. It's start with Teams, create your team, invite your internal and your external folks to that team, and then go use the SharePoint site and recognize that every single thing you're doing on that SharePoint site, everybody has access to it. And then the final caveat is change your folks out from being from having edit rights to contribute rights, because they're gonna jack your site up. That's it. Let me take a sip of water right here. For my podcast listeners, well, I guess the people on video too. This is probably kind of annoying, but bro, I need a sip. Okay. All right, let's get into the segments. So if this is your first time here, I want to let you know that I do a few segments after we do the main topic. So first is LinkedIn Love. This is where I shout out somebody on LinkedIn because, I just like what they're doing on LinkedIn and I want to shout them out. Now, this week, I'm shouting out my guy, Greg Zelfond. And here's why. It's not necessarily a LinkedIn thing. It's because I see Greg on LinkedIn all the time, but Greg has been in my life. He doesn't know it, but he's been in my life for mad long. You know what I'm saying? Since way back. Because all of us SharePoint developers, way back when we were, developing on old school SharePoint, we used to run into all kinds of issues. SharePoint was just filled with quirks, issues, things that, that was crazy. So the first thing you do is hit Google and go search for something. And there was a lot of people who would come up and you'd get used to seeing their stuff on Google because they created blogs and YouTube channels and showed us in the community a whole bunch of stuff. And one of these folks, one of the OGs, is Greg Zelfond. Shout out to Greg, because I wouldn't be where I'm at without his input into the community. So, it's a beautiful thing to now be able to actually be in contact with him, because every now and then we'll chat in somebody's comments on LinkedIn, which is crazy because for years I watched him from a distance do his thing. And, I got acknowledgement from him too a few months ago when he was like, out of nowhere, he was like, I think it was Ami who highlighted me, Ami Diamond, another SharePoint guy. He's a Microsoft MVP 2 times, been on the show a few times. He highlighted me and Greg and a bunch of other people inside of a post. And then I came under the post and I said something, I don't remember. And then Greg came under the post like, what you talking about? I love Thurman. I was like, what? This guy know I exist? That's crazy. Because, to me, I'm not really like out there trying to get on somebody's radar. So when I hear that I'm on somebody's radar, I think it's pretty cool. So the people's radar that I'm trying to get on, obviously, is, you end users, you folks who don't know much about SharePoint, and trying to help you out. But to the SharePoint community, I try not to, be all up like, hey, acknowledge me type thing. I'm just here trying to do some good work. And if I get noticed, that's what's up. And if not, that's also cool. It's fine with me. As long as I get the message out to you, the end user, that's what I'm trying to help out here. You know what I'm saying? So shout out to Greg. Go follow him. He is on Instagram. He's on LinkedIn. He's on YouTube. He has his own website. And he's a wealth of information when it comes to SharePoint. So shout out to Greg. All right. Let's get into fan mail. This is sad, you know what I'm saying? Because for multiple weeks I've been saying, yo, hit me up on some fan mail, which again, the way it works is if you're looking inside of your podcast app, it has a link that says send us a chat or send us a text, something like that. I don't remember. Maybe I should remember so that I can help. You know what? Let me look right now. All right, let me go inside of here. I'm gonna look inside of Spotify. That's one of the podcast apps I have on my phone. And when I'm looking at this episode, it says, oh, wait, it's not on the episode. You got to go to the podcast page. So when you go to the podcast page, all right, wait a minute. Maybe I'm wrong. Oh, I got I have 4 5-star reviews on Spotify. Shout out to you, whoever did that. I like that. Okay. I can't. When I look at an episode, oh yeah. Okay, yeah. When I look at an episode, it's on an individual episode. It says send us a text. So if I click send us a text, yeah, it opens up my text app, and then it allows me to send a text to me, I guess. So yeah, when you send a text to me, then I'll get it in an email, and then I'll read it out on the next show. So shout out to you if you've given me a 5-star review on Spotify. I didn't even know that. Thank you. I appreciate that. I wish I could see who did it and give you a shout out, but it's all good. Send me some fan mail. So here's what I'm gonna do. Since I've been begging on my knees like a clown here, asking for fan mail and nobody's hit me up, I'm gonna give you another incentive. If you send me some fan mail, matter of fact, just send me a SharePoint question or send me a work question. We're doing this at work. Is SharePoint a good idea for this? Send me that on fan mail. I don't even like using the term fan. I don't have fans. I have people who listen to the show. I have listeners of the show. Same fan mail is kind of weird. But if you want to get your question answered, send it in. You know what I'm saying? Just tell me what you're doing at work, and I will see whether or not SharePoint is a good fit for you or one of these other tools in the 365 suite. Looking forward to hearing from you. All right, let's go with announcements here. First thing, if you haven't gone to SharePointFreebie.com and gotten your list building training, I need you to go there. Because one, list building training is helpful. It is your first foray into how this thing works, how to use a SharePoint list. It's the one that, that will kill your spreadsheets. Once you see how that whole thing works, you're going to be like, oh my God, I want to use this for everything, because it's way better than using a spreadsheet to collect information. So go there for that. Now, two, when you get on that email list, you're going to like it, because here's what I've been doing lately. I've been having I've been sending an email out to my list every Friday, and it's kind of like a little magazine situation going on. You know what I'm saying? Like it's, I put a new template in there, and then you'll see links to a lot of cool things that will, support your SharePoint journey. So get on the email list, because I'm only sending that to my email list. I think this thing, honestly, to be for real, it's going to grow into like a magazine. I think I could see like a year from now, this thing really being like a magazine and being super helpful and people looking forward to getting it. So get on the email list when you get your list building training, and get your exclusive SharePoint about to be magazine. All right. Listen, I got another announcement, which you would have known about if you were on an email list. I am starting a community next year, and I'm really going hard with this. I tried to start a community in the past, but it was going to be, I feel like I didn't think it all the way through. This time, the thinking all the way through that I've done says to me that I need to put everything, any and everything that I create for SharePoint folks inside of this community, because there's just too much. Like, I need you to get to a place where when you first come in the community and you see the start here button, this will tell you where I think your SharePoint journey should start based on where you are. You know what I'm saying? This is inside of here. You got live Q&As, which is me consulting. Just, you hop on a Q&A, let's have a chat. You know what I mean? Then there's all of my trainings. So risk register revamp, any other trainings I create in the future, like intro to SharePoint, how to create a WBS, how to create a project plan. That's all going inside of the community. Now, I've been thinking about leaving it as, we're outside of the community. So if somebody just wants to buy the course and go on with their business, they can do that. That's fine. But I'm putting everything inside of the community. Then we're going to have the ability to access each other. So I want to do this thing. I think I'm really good at highlighting other people. So I want to do like a thing where we do a member spotlight, but it's not just like a post on a page. It's like me talking to a person, recording it, and then releasing that video to the folks inside of the community. So if I interview like a project manager who's out in Arizona and they're trying to, work on whatever, and this person's vibe and work resonates with somebody else inside of the community, they could reach out and be like, yo, I heard you needed help with this kind of project. I just did one of those last year. Let's collaborate. Because the quality of people that I want to bring inside of the program, I feel like if we're on the same wavelength, then they will be easier to connect with each other. So I really want to do that. More details on the community as it comes out. I think what I'm going to do is build that in public. And the whole build in public thing is just basically literally put this whole thing together in front of everybody. The ups, the downs, the lefts, the rights, the ins and outs. You know what I mean? I think that's all I got for announcements. Follow me on LinkedIn. And tune in next week. I hope you had a good time listening to this. I hope you learned something. If you did, reach out. Let me know. I'm always on LinkedIn. I'm on TikTok every day. Hit me up. Have a good one.